Hello Vapors, this is 100% VG with part 2 of the Phantom Sub-Ohm Tank that was sent to me for review by Origin Vape. www.originvape.com. In part 2, I will be covering the RBA section that comes with the kit. In the box, it comes in this little pocket right here. Okay, you also get some organic Japanese cotton. You get it comes with a pre-wrapped coil that I used in only to practice building the RBA section, and you get this little baggie of goodies. And I want to show you that these little dots over here, well, are actually two. Those little dots are two spare grub screws. You get a 4mm rod, you get an Allen key for the grub screws, and you get 3 spare O-rings. Okay. Now, Danger Will Robinson. These grub screws are teeny tiny and they're easy to lose. The one that screws into the bottom, the plus pin, let me get something to point with. Where's my little screwdriver? Well, this is smooth. Here it is over here. The ones that screw into the bottom have a lot of room to go from here to the center pin. There's a lot of room for that to screw in, and you can unscrew it and it will stay in there. You can even unscrew it so it's sticking out a little bit so you can tell which of the 2 holes it's in. See, that goes straight through, if you can see through it. But anyway, these holes are the airflow, and there's 4 of them, 2, 3, 4, and these holes are for the grub screw that locks the positive lead of the coil into the base. This one up here, and the positive lead goes through that little hole. That little hole, okay? And you can see the wire. There is a coil on here, okay? This top one, and you can see how the air hole is way off center. I tried to show that in the with the stainless steel heads, stainless steel wire heads. Would you focus, please? Come back. Anyway, and that little dot that you see below the air hole is where the negative lead comes in. The negative is on the top. Actually, it gets ground through the whole RBA, and the plus is on the bottom. And where that grub screw goes in, right here, okay, where that grub screw goes in, the space to the hole, wow, I'm not focusing very well, but I can't put my hand behind it. The space of the hole is not very far. And when you back that one up, plus the threads on this one, that hole seems to be bigger. And the threads on it don't hold the little grub screw as tight as they do in the bottom. So I have dropped that little screw 3 times. And you know, when you drop it, it's so tiny, it's really hard to find. So my caution is, when you go to work on the RBA section, RBA head, RBA coil, whatever they want to call it, take those screws all the way out and put them in something where they cannot be lost. What I do is, just for convenience, because I got it right here, I put them in here. All right. So that's that. Now I'm going to take the Allen key that comes with and the 4mm rod that comes with, and take the head apart. I will show you, put this on the side. I'll show you the, just going to do this off screen. Get those little screws out. The bottom one, the plus pin, takes more work to get it out because there's more metal on the bottom. Okay, and it comes apart. There, on the top, you have even more notches to be able to grab it, and then there are notches here to be able to grab it. So you hold these notches, and you unscrew. And it comes apart. Oh, well, I was going to show you. I already unscrewed it and messed it up. But there is a coil and a wick in there. I was going to show you how it's supposed to look. But it looks very much like the head does, where you can see the cotton inside the hole. You know, it's not sticking through the hole. It rests up against the hole. And that's been the major confusion with most of the people that looked at this and tried to figure out how it worked. And when I first got it, I tried it the way that they were saying to do it, and it didn't perform well at all. But when you put, and this is used, but when you put the cotton through, you put the cotton through first. You wrap a 4mm coil, spaced coil. You can see that that's spaced, and you put the cotton in it, and then you insert all of that in the head. And I'm just going to do this in a rush. I'm going to do it backwards so I can get it up there and show you. But you put it through so that the cotton is in that hole. And that hole is a 3mm hole. So when you have a 4mm coil with that much cotton coming through it, and you cut the cotton a little bit long, and I'll cover that, I'll show you. See how the cotton pushes down and it covers the hole. And that is the proper way to build your coil setup. Well, it's a single coil. You can only do single coil in here, but that's the way you build it. Okay, you have enough cotton sticking out the side so that when you insert it, it will push the cotton down, and as you push it up to its proper place, the cotton fills the hole, the wick hole that you can see going through to my hand. Okay, that's the way you build one. What I did at first was, and I was going to show you, this is the coil that comes with the kit. Get it on the 4mm pole, and I used this just to mount it in the RBA section, so that's why it's bent and short. The leads are much longer. The leads are actually about this long when you get it. They're about 1 inch long. Can you see? There you go. See, the leads are about 1 inch long. And because of the way you have to put it together, I hate wasting wire. You know, I don't cut it generally like for an RDA or anything any longer than it has to. And if I could cut it that short and put it together, I would. But you can't. You need some spare. Okay. But you can say that is a spaced coil, and they recommend that kind of spacing. It works better with that kind of spacing. Let me get my drill bit that I put away. What I did at first, following what some of the other people had said they did was I used, I think it's 9/64 is real close to 3.5 millimeters. It's like 3.57 millimeters, and I wrapped a micro coil so that when I put the cotton through it, it would be right about 3.5 millimeters. And I pulled the cotton, I had the cotton going through and sticking out a little bit on both sides, about about an eighth of an inch. And that was a perfect length that it fit up inside the top, inside the tank, without bending it and messing it up. It just was able to freely stick out. The problem with that is microcoils don't seem to work well in this tank. You can see that side looks okay, but that side has a burn in it. Okay, I tried it again. Made another one. That side looks okay. Focus. But this side, well, it does. This side has a burn in it. Microcoils just don't work well in here. And I guess Horizon Tech knew that well enough that they sent a pre-wrapped 4mm coil to show you this is what you're supposed to use. And in the little manual, which I didn't notice at first, there's even a picture of how to make your coil. Cotton is already through the coil, and you insert it into the head like that. So that's the way to do it. This rod, this 4mm rod that they include in the kit, is for wrapping coils. It's not for inserting your coil and used to straighten the coil. What I did when I built these 3.5mm ones, is I put them through the hole, put them through a hole, and then with it lined up in there, I put a screwdriver through it to get it centered. And it's hard to do with the leads already cut, but I got it in there and I adjusted it holding the other lead spinning it, and I kept it centered with the screwdriver through it, so that when I put the assembly back together, leaving it on a screwdriver. Come on, baby. Okay. And I actually did it this way. Made sure that I did it that way so that the screw hole was on that side of the screwdriver, so that when I went to tighten the nut, the grub screw, I could get the screwdriver out of the way and the other end could spin, because especially if it's like this, you're working backwards and you got all this stuff in the way and you can't spin the Allen hex key. Now, I'm not saying you cannot use a microcoil, but 2 out of 2 did not work for me. If you're going to use anything close to a microcoil, they can't actually be touching. It cannot actually be a microcoil. There has to be some space, a little bit at least of space between each coil, all the way around. They can't touch anywhere. So, what I'm going to do for this video is show you the way that Horizon Tech recommends that you make one. Okay, so here we go with the whole process from start to finish. Actually building a coil for the RBA section. Now, one thing that you have to note, and I'm going to try to get this on screen, but from the top of the air hole, I'm sorry, from the top of the wick hole to the top where that screw hole is where it would actually lock is about 5 centimeters. And to the bottom screw, to the bottom grub screw, just take my word for it, is about, millimeters. It's about 14 millimeters. So that's almost that's 19 millimeters of coil leads inside the head, that's a lot of wire. And I don't have a non-resistance wire welder, so I'm pretty sure that the one that they sent with it does have non-resistance wire tacked onto each side. I'm pretty sure I saw a weld. Okay, but without that, you just have to have those leads be that long inside with resistance wire. But when I made the microcoils and looked down in there, I couldn't see the legs glowing at all. But just to show you, that is how much lead length you have away from the coil on either side. And overall, it's almost 20 millimeters. And with that bend, it probably is 20 millimeters of wire, if not more. 21. So, according to steam engine coil building site, for 26 gauge wire, a 0.9 ohm coil will be 4 wraps with 18 millimeters. I'll make it, yeah, well, anyway, it won't really matter. The wire length required, no matter how long the legs are, is 3.146 inches. Okay, and because you do need so much wire on either side of the coil to be able to get this puppy together, go ahead and cut yourself 2 extra inches, so you've got an inch left over on both sides. All right. I hate wasting wire, but it's just necessary with this one. Okay, so I'm going to wrap 5/4 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull it a little bit farther because of springiness. Okay. Compress it a little bit. And that is a 5/4 wrap, 26 gauge. Okay, anyway, it's not one to show. Now what I do is I put this on into a dripper and I glow burn it so that it's doing really 3 things. It's going to burn all the oils and any manufacturing materials off. It's going to stiffen it, and it's going to allow me to squeeze it a little bit and get the exact spacing I want. Alright. And we're gonna have a lot of leads sticking out. So you just have to make sure they're not touching. But I'm only going to tighten them enough to make a good connection. I don't want to crimp them, bend them too bad. Make sure nothing is touching ground on the positive. And that away just enough so it doesn't touch. Okay, and I have the coil mounted in an RDA so that I can glow burn it. I have it set to 12.5 watts, so I'll just leave it there. But see that smoke? That's burning crap off the coil. It's burning oils and this and that and whatever else off of the coil. Okay, and I'll take a little X-Acto knife and space the coils evenly between all of them. Take the coil off of the RDA. Put the rod through it so I don't burn myself. Okay. And there is a not perfect but not bad. Space it a little bit more. Spaced coil. Alright, and since I have to pull a wrap to make the leads face in either direction, the one that's not spaced as well as it could be, I'm just going to pull that one out. Pull both of them a little bit. And now I have leads facing the opposite directions. Okay, but both leads are basically leaving the same side, and I don't want that. I want them to leave the center of the coil. So I put it on the rod, the 4mm rod, and I use these pliers. They have a wide grip. You can use any kind of needle nose, but I like these for this because I have them. And I grab the lead with a little bit of space, and I pull it toward the rod. Do the same with the other one. Pull it toward the rod. They come out a little bunny-eared, but when I straighten them, I have done better. they will be more like leaving the center. Okay? Then because the plus that goes in the bottom, well, actually, because the top hole, the air hole is not centered. The little wire hole that you see above it isn't centered either. The bottom hole for the positive is centered, and I want the coil to be directly under that air hole, which means it takes a little bit of finagling. So what I do, I put the coil back on the rod, and I use these pliers. These pliers have round noses instead of being flat like regular needle nose pliers. These have round tips. And I take one lead and I bend it toward the coil, and then bend it away from the coil. So that it leaves the coil coming from the other end of the coil. Alright? And then the coil that's going to go to the minus, I bend it actually away from the coil a little bit. So that we end up with this. And that will, the top one there will be straightened more. But one bends away from the coil and goes up, one bends into the coil and goes down. And what that does is when it's put together, it helps to position the coil centered to the air hole. Alright, and because we have a 4mm rod, I cut my cotton to be that thick. Alright, spin one end to get it through the coil. Push it through. And the way that I cut it, see, that's the flat side. I like to turn it so that the flat side is facing the leads and pull it through. Leave about that much on one end and about the same amount on the other end. And you need to have the cotton already in the coil before you mount it. Now, some of these wraps are close on that side. I'm going to space them out a little bit so that they're all pretty much evenly spaced, and it'll heat up right. But the effort is worth it to get an RBA that vapes well. because when I made the microcoils, I did the same bins, but microcoils didn't vape well at all. And the space coil does. Okay. So that is pretty much what we have. Alright, and I'm going to pull it through this way a little bit more. And then I'm going to fluff it. I'm going to separate the layers. And then I'm going to spread it the other way. Same on both sides. Separate the layers. And then fan it out the other way. So there's a lot of fluff. Okay. Then you take that and the lead that has the bin going toward the coil goes up to what is going to be the minus. Yeah, I hit it backwards. The one that goes away from the coil, goes up. I've only done this once before. Which means we need more on this side. Fluff it back up. So because the coil's not going to be centered, you need more wick on one side than the other. Okay, more wick on one side than the other. And when you have this in your hand and you're doing it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's going to go, oops, I didn't get it through. That's why you need some lead to work with. Okay, but with it through, you can see where the wire comes through, I hope. No, you can't. You can see where the wire comes through the top. And as I see, and that is going to push the coil toward the air hole when it goes in. And you just do that. Then you get that other lead through that little hole. And screw it together. And get it tight. As tight as you can get it. Because when you screw it into the base and tighten it, you don't want it spinning closed and messing up your coil. Okay, now you can see that the coil is in a pretty good position, but I want it closer to this side so that the whole coil is below the air hole. So I'm just going to put a screwdriver in there and work it over a little bit. It's a little high. Need to lower it some. But you can see how that fills the wick hole. The cotton fills the wick hole because 4 millimeters of cotton is so much wider than a 3.5 millimeter wick hole, and that's how it's properly built. Okay, so now when I go to tighten the grub screws, that's going to mess with the alignment of the head of the coil below the air hole also, but it'll be pretty easy to deal with. Oops, and put that screw in. Come here, you. And don't drop these people. They are so tiny, they're really hard to find. I can promise you that. I'm doing this off cam for you so I can see what I'm doing and not drop the little booger. But once it starts getting tight, it's going to bend that wire toward the Allen key, because the grub screw hole goes all the way through. So when the screw pushes it, it actually pushes the wire into the hole on the other side a little bit, and the same thing happens on the bottom. That hole goes all the way through, and you can put the grub screw in on either side from the bottom. What I do is, because it tightens almost with two of them vertical, this is, you don't have a choice. That screw goes here, so I put the bottom screw in here instead of there, so it's easy to find when I go to take it apart. I know this one's here, so that one is there. That's the way I do it. Okay, and that did move the coil. So I'm going to move it again. I'll show you. You can see how much. Wow, would you please focus? How much that moved the coil. Moved it over quite a bit. And again, I want it right below. Still a little bit high too. I want it right below the air hole, all of it. So I'm going to bring it over and do what I have to make that happen. This is a little straight pin. And get in there and work with it. And let it focus. There's all 4 coils right below the air hole. One is a little bit over. There are all 4. Okay, so now, you know how like when you're working with an RDA or an RTA, you can just spin the wire under the capture screw and break it flush? Don't try it. When I did that with the minus lead on top, that little grub screw came loose and fell out. So don't try it. Cut it. I don't have flush cutters like some people have, but these will get real close. Cut that puppy. And there's the minus. I'm sorry, the plus sticking out. See, so we're wasting almost 2 inches of wire. I hate that, but you don't really have much choice. Now, even though there's a tiny bit of wire sticking out of that little plus pin, I'm having trouble with focus today. Anyway, there's a tiny bit of wire. That little bit of wire sticking up here won't be a problem at all because that's inside the air channel of the tank. But when you screw this on, when it touches the plus pin in the base, it'll just crimp it up in there against that Allen screw, grub screw. And it will not be an issue. Going to juice up my cotton in my build here. And this should be real close to being right on 0.90. Yeah, I'll stick it in the Heat Vape Invader Mini here because it will read 2 digits on the ohms. Just because I'm curious how close I got. Give me a minute. Shake this up. I know this seems like a lot of work, and it kind of is, but the way it performs over the microcoils that I built on a 3.5 inch center diameter, it beats them to a pulp. Okay, gonna saturate my cotton. This blue box cotton is very absorbent also. I don't think it's as absorbent as the cotton that is in the stainless steel wire heads. That stuff is really something special. Must be some super premium grade, or they did something to it to absorb as well as it does. I think that's going to be pretty good. Set that down, take another vape, let it saturate a little bit. Don't want to burn my cotton. Now this tank is almost totally full right now, but when I take it apart to put the RBA in and take the head out, I gave you a little demo of how you would bottom fill. I showed you how to side fill in part 1. Upside down. Try this head out a little bit. Take it out. Put the RBA in. I can see that little short piece of wire. I couldn't get it to focus for you. But when you tighten it into the deck, into the base, whatever you want to call it, it just bends it as needed. And the head with the coil stays very nicely centered because the grub screws hold it. And it just crimps that little pigtail in the bottom up toward the grub screw and out of the way. Alright, so it's going to... I'm not actually going to add any, but I'm just going to show you. Against the glass and the what I'll call the air tube where the head actually fits, the four little slots that I showed you in part 1, you hold your dripper bottle, your dropper bottle against the glass so that the juice won't go down the center and fill. And actually, I've done it 3 times now, filled from the bottom, and I could fill it faster from the side than I could from the bottom, which sounds kind of amazing, but the spacing in there is pretty close. Okay, like I showed you in part 1, I get the head past the O-ring so that I don't cut it up. Get that tight, open the air all the way. And I haven't tried building a nickel coil in here yet. I intend to do that just to see. But it's going to be a little bit tricky because everything that I've read about temperature coils, they should not be above 3 millimeters in diameter. This says 0.99, but I hadn't vaped it yet. It may go down a little bit. Go ahead and vape it on here. Turn it up to 30. Oh, I got that locked. Okay, turn it up to 30 watts. Look at that. Wow, the flavor at 30 watts. This build came out great. It's still being read at 0.99. That's fine. I mean, it's working like a champ. The flavor is just knocking me out. I'm going to turn it down to 20. See how it does. Come on. Doesn't like 20. Put it to 25. It's just really, the flavor is fantastic. I'm blown away. The microcoils that I built, they vape nice, but they didn't vape like this. The stainless steel heads were beating them all to oh, to the devil's home and back. Okay, here we are on the Salgadly 150. It's on 40 watts. So I'm gonna leave it there. Got a little bit of juice from somewhere. 40 watts, 6.3 volts, and on here it says 1 ohm, 1.0. That first one was a little bit flooded, and I don't know why, but it was. $40 watts. Let's see if 50 watts is going to kill me. It's probably going to be way too intense with this Cinnamon Red Hots. This is my normal all-day vape, 15% Cinnamon Red Hots VG. And this is probably going to be killer. I think the wick was a little bit saturated. It is just that intense. I'm not going to do 50 watts. This, when they say this is a flavor tank, they mean it. Wow. I'm going down to 35. Shoot, I'm going back to 30. Got my mouth on fire. It seems to be flooded. I must not have the cotton sealing the head well enough. That can be adjusted with the when I did it with the when I put it together with the microcoils, I used this little straight pin and I adjusted the cotton to so that it filled the holes nicely. But Jimmy the Cricket, go to 35. Dry it out a little bit. Go back to 40. The tank does get warm, but the drip tip does not. Try to get some of that cinnamon off my lips. So there you have it. You don't have to do all those bends in the wire like I did. You can let it go up, both the same side from the coil, like that, and then just position it. You could stick a screwdriver in there and bend it back toward the middle, without doing all those bends that I did. I just took the time to do it because I wanted to. You don't have to. Like I said, you're gonna have to reposition the coil anyway. So you can push it center this way and center this way and do it however you want. But that's the RBA section, and properly building it with a 4mm rod and putting your cotton through it before you insert it. Now you can build a 3.5mm or a 3mm, and I'm going to do a 3mm with a temp control coil with nickel 200 wire, and just get it a little bit more packed in there so I can fluff it out when I pull it through the holes. It'll be sticking out either side of the RBA a little bit, instead of being flush like this is, it'll be sticking out a little bit so that it can saturate. And I'll fluff it. And I'll probably do that. I'll do a video of that also for you, just so you can see if it's worth you fooling with. I don't have a doubt that the tank will handle it. It's just because that wick hole is so big. It's 3.5 millimeters. I need to be able to fluff it out enough that it will still seal the holes and not flood the RBA section. But anyhow, that is that's a wrap. And I'm telling you people, this thing is an absolute. I mean, I have a Cronus 2650 26650 with a 26650 Tobe. I don't have a build in it right now, but that is an absolute huge section to work with, and you can build some killer stuff in this. And the flavor on this is rivaling this. I mean, they're pretty much equal. I was building. I built my setup so that it was about 45 watts, and it's matching, man. I am just amazed that a tank can do that, and especially an RBA can do that. You got to get one of these. I'm telling you. It's a little bit flooded, even with the it's flooded. That's why I'm not getting the dense vapor, but the flavor is just, I mean, absolute killer. So that's it. That's part 2 of building the RBA section. Only my second try. I think in this build, the build that I had before that I tore apart. To make this video was working well without any kind of problems. It was working perfect, and I tore it out. Here it is. I tore it out to well, that's not it. That's a failed attempt. Where's the one that I pulled out? Anyway, the one that was in there was working perfect, and I tore it out to do the tutorial for you guys. Here it is. I showed it to you earlier, and it was working very well. That is not burn marks. That is because cinnamon is a coil gunker, so it's a little bit of black buildup on there. Anyway, been rambling long enough. Thank you, Lydia of Origin Vapes. And I'm gonna work with nickel 200 wire to get a perfect build and come back and do a part 3 and cover that for you. Okay, but this is 100% VG. As always, people, please consider joining CASA and fighting for our vaping rights. Fight for your vaping rights, and that will help us all. Thanks again, Lydia. Thanks again, Bill, Origin Vape, for this excellent tank. I mean, this is just, I can't, I am amazed. 100% VG saying, vape smart, be happy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.